Good morning. I'd like to open the Metro North Long Island Railroad Committee meeting. I'm on. First thing I'd like to do is I'd like to congratulate Chuck for being fully initiated in the MTA Board. I'd like to congratulate you for being fully initiated in the MTA Board.
Jim, I thank you for the opening. I just want you to know, anyone who wants to see the photograph, I wasn't in the hotel loading zone. I was outside of it. Number two, as a matter of fact, I was in this building coming in here to go do stuff. There's no good deed that ever goes unpunished.
Okay, public comment. Murray.
This is about the wall. The wall that's up between these people and us. This is no more than ventilating at a psychiatric session. Because what we say up here is completely ignored by those people sitting up there. I'll wait. For my poor 2 minutes up here, I don't even get the attention I deserve. There's a wall. If this were New Jersey Transit, and I asked the question, Jim Simpson would look over at Jim Weinstein and Jim, like, why are we buying railroad cars with a cab in each one? And Jim Simpson would look at Jim Weinstein, and Jim Weinstein would look over at Kevin, and Kevin would say, hey, Murray, this is why we're doing it. Or he'd say, hey, I'll meet you after the meeting. It's pretty complicated. We'll talk about it. There's a dialogue between the board, the executive director, and the public. There's no dialogue here. This is BS. We get to ventilate for 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, you cut me off whether I'm in the middle of a thought that's relevant or not. This has got nothing to do with anything but letting the public shoot their mouth off. I go to too many meetings, and I go to involved with too many things. I'm wearing this because I'm going to the Westchester Police Advisory Board meeting this afternoon to find out why police officers at an accident scene will not wear it. Everybody else has got a safety vest on, but the police officer. Why? Well, we're special. We don't have to wear them. There are 22 people out of accident and only one person without a safety vest, the police officer, everywhere. It's a mentality. It's a cultural thing. And the same culture here. We don't have to listen to you. We're doing our email. We're doing everything else. What you've got to say has got nothing to do with us, so why should we listen? And it's got everything to do with the way the MTA runs. Because until you start having a dialogue with the people up here, nothing's going to happen. You're ordering hundreds of cars with control cabs in them, and you need none of them. You'd have 10 extra seats in every car. You would have no maintenance, no original purchase on electronic equipment that has to be kept up to date. You need, on a 6-car train, you need 2 control cabs, one in the front, one in the back. Every diesel that comes in has the diesel in the back away from Grand Central. You want to add cars, they add them from the front. You want to add 2 more cars, add them from the front. Only one needs a control cab. That's outdated thinking. How do we stop it? Well, go look at your notes from last time I raised the issue. I got no answer. I met with nobody. You won't meet with me. I'm this weird guy with grandchildren who doesn't do anything, and I get up here and berate you. Yeah, I berate you for one good reason, because you're not paying attention. I have not got an answer why you're buying cars with control cabs in them, wasting money and less seats. Howard, who do I talk to about renegotiating the order for the next 50 cars?
Murray,
well, as soon as he answers me, I will.
I'll answer. Murray, you met with our staff after the last meeting when you raised this exact point, and they sat and they met with you and they talked to you about it.
Didn't get anywhere. You're still ordering them. Have you renegotiated the contract to cut out the cards, the cabs? Do you propose to renegotiate the contract? That's the wall. You're not interested in the answer. You're not interested in saving a few $1 billion. You'd rather get me off the table. So which is it? Do you want to save money, or do you want to shut me up? Oh, by the way, I'm just as good as the rest of you. If there's an empty chair up there and it's comfortable, I'm going to sit in it. And if you want to have him carrying me out here, let's do it in front of everybody.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes of April 23rd.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carried. 2012 work plan is in your books on page 17. No changes. That's your North report. Howard.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I have a couple of items I'd like to report on to you this morning. Let me start with our system performance, on-time performance. In the book, we have the information through April. The performance through April has been excellent. As of April, the trains operated 98.3% on time. And of note, there are two statistics I want to highlight for the committee. That in the month of April on the Hudson line, we only had 2 late trains during the evening rush hour. So out of 765 trains that ran that month, 2 were late. On the Harlem line, we had the same 2 trains late out of 840 trains. So those are really very positive results. I do want to alert you that in May, we have had a series of incidents. Performance has not been as good as it had been through April. We'll talk more about them next month, but we've had a series of 6 different incidents that have affected performance during the month of May. And I'll talk more about that next month. With regard to the M8s, they continue to operate well. They continue to be delivered to the property. We now have 104 of the M8s have been conditionally accepted. On weekdays, about a little under a third of the trains are M8s. And on weekends, it's about 50%. So we're well on our way to retiring the older equipment. Third item to mention is that we're very pleased that we were recognized, we being Grand Central Terminal, should say, was approved as a National Historic Civil Engineering Landmark by the American Society of Civil Engineers this month. Just to put that in perspective, some of the other facilities that have gotten this award are the Erie Canal, the Brooklyn Bridge, the George Washington Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Hoover Dam. So Grand Central is now up there with this designation, and this will be formally recognized with a plaque in February 2013 as part of the centennial. Also, report on we completed during the month of April and May, we had 10 town hall meetings with all Metro-North employees. We met over 600 people at 5 work locations. We talked to our employees about our Vision 2013 and their role in achieving our goals. Basically, the themes to report back to you that we heard were the pride in Metro-North's history and accomplishments, employee satisfaction in their role. There was also questions raised about would there be cost of living increase in 2012, and expressions of interest in what programs were available for succession planning and management development. With regard to ridership, the March numbers are in your book. I will highlight just on one thing that is new is that Port Jervis line continues to recover, though slowly, from the service suspension of last fall due to the hurricane. April numbers are very positive again. Ridership's up 2.8%. Year-to-date, we're now up 4.1%. Driven commutation ridership's up 2.2%, while non-commutation ridership is up 7%. On the financial front, the March results continue to be positive. Operating revenues are $6 million, or 4% above budget, due both to ridership revenue and GCT and non-fare revenue. Operating expenditures are over 7% lower than projected, including overtime, is $1.6 million under the budget. The reasons for this are manyfold. I mean, there's a continued focus at Metro-North on the budget. In particular, a couple of things I do want to highlight is that we've been able to continue to reduce the cost of material and the cost to rebuild the older New Haven line cars. With EM8s coming on board, we've been able to take a harder look at what we need to do to keep the M2s, 4s, and 6s going for a shorter period now and be able to save some money there. Also, we have on the overtime side, obviously the mild winter helped us significantly, and we're also continuing to do work through a series of different initiatives. We've smoothed out the vacations on our M&V department. We've reassigned people to different work shifts, and we're working also to better right-size the workforce. That we've had a large number of vacancies, and we're working towards better to bring those people in, which in turn then will be reducing the overtime. Two other items. Just want to note on June 12th in Newburgh at the Hilton Garden Inn, between 4 and 8, we'll be having our public meeting on our West of Hudson study to improve both the Port Jervis line and to provide access to Stewart Airport. So that will be the end of Phase 1, and we'll be talking about Phase 2. And then I want to do one thing. I want to recognize a long-term Metro-North employee, Rich Conway. Rich, let me see here. I don't want to miss. Here we go. I have notes. So Rich is retiring from Metro-North. This is unfortunately something we seem to do almost every month. He started his career in 1977 at the Long Island Railroad, then came to Metro-North, and is retiring after 35 years. He worked his way up from a car technician all the way to being a deputy chief mechanical officer in 2010. Not only did he do good work at Metro-North, he was a major player in the industry in terms of developing FRA safety standards for passenger rolling stock. And he also helped set up our RCM program, whose very positive results we'll be talking about later. So, Rich, I want to ask you to please come up. We're going to give you a little plaque and be recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And with that, I finish my my report. And if there are any questions, be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Just
John.
one.
Is this appropriate time to deal with the diversity report, or do you want me to delay that?
No, that would be during that item.
Now?
No,
Or you
later,
gonna-
when we get to the
Fine.
item.
Jim?
Just a quick observation. I noticed for the month of March, we actually put $17 million on the bottom line in cash flow. I don't know how unusual that is, but for an operation that generally, is scheduled to run at a deficit, I thought that was a noteworthy achievement.
I think that's that's quite unusual, and it may have been the first time we've been able to do that.
Any other questions? Okay, Helena.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Similar to Metro-North, Long Island Railroad continues to experience strong ridership growth. April represented the 8th consecutive month of growth, 3.1%, and we carried 6.9 million customers in April, 3.1% more than April 2011. Commutation increased by 2.5%. Monthly ticket sales were up by 2,172, and weeklies were up by 1,142. This suggests that Long Island Railroad ridership growth has caught up to employment growth. We, of course, want to see continued strong employment growth because that's what we tend to track. Regional employment grew by 1.8% between March 2011 and March 2012. Needless to say, recent reports about employment growth slowing up remains a concern for us. Non-commutation, of course, is still an area of very strong growth on our system. It increased by 4% the 8th consecutive month. Warmer temperatures and less rainfall clearly played a role. We carried 5,325 customers on Met's opening day on April 5th, and that was a 16% increase over 2011. Year-to-date, total ridership was 26.8 million, and we're excited about seeing that trend continue. I also want to note our very strong on-time performance. Again, a combination of the mild weather and I think extraordinary efforts by our team to make sure we maximize our on-time performance across the system. April, 95.7. I'd like to make everyone aware of an Amtrak incident that occurred on Friday. A Long Island Railroad eastbound Port Washington train with 80 customers on board struck an Amtrak signal foreman shortly after emerging from one of the East River tunnels at approximately 3:30 a.m. on Friday morning. The foreman, who sustained head and shoulder injuries, but at this time did not appear to be life-threatening, was part of an Amtrak gang that was performing work as part of the East Side Access Project. The incident is under investigation by the Long Island Railroad and Amtrak. Work in this area was suspended on Friday in order to assess safety protocols, and a reenactment of the accident was also staged. I will report that on Friday morning we did have minimal disruption to the AM service with only a couple of Port Washington trains impacted. Because of the track layout at this location, we were not able to do an end-to-end train evacuation. So approximately 80 customers were on the train for about 90 minutes. Customers on the incident train were kept informed and were provided emergency water. I have to comment, the crew did a great job distributing water. At that hour, most of the customers were sleeping. They were a very good group, listened to the information, asked questions, and mostly just slept. The train was eventually moved to Woodside, and we are reviewing all of the safety implications with Amtrak regarding active crew work. I do want to take a moment and draw your attention to our capital program highlights report that is on page 257. There we note the East River Tunnel total track replacement update. As you recall, this work began as a result of the derailment on Mother's Day by an Amtrak train last year. So in 1 year, 4,200 feet of total track replacement and drainage repair has been completed in East River Tunnel 3 and 4. With more than 6,100 feet of new continuously welded rail installed. I want to emphasize that we continue to work with Amtrak on that work. It is extremely important, and they've done a tremendous job, especially on the new drainage system and drainage covers that will give us a long-term benefit. Finally, in that report, you will see an overview of capital program improvements that we plan to make on the main line, particularly at Hicksville, Mineola, and Westbury. These investments will increase capacity and reliability and provide significant customer benefits. In Hicksville, we'll have a full platform replacement, including escalators, elevators, stairs, lighting, waiting room, and canopies. We look at this opportunity to really revitalize the look in Hicksville. And of course, I always mention try to get rid of the pigeons. That is one of my worst stations for pigeons. A track extension from an existing siding will be brought up to the station. That will increase capacity. And then we will have a replacement of a signal supervisory system, which will increase the reliability of operations. That's one of our important areas where a confluence of track come together. The signal system upgrades will be beneficial for trains going to Ronkonkoma and trains going to Huntington. In Mineola, we will be collaborating with the village on drainage improvements, and we will look to improve platform and track and signal there as well, so that we can have a better Mineola environment. And in Westbury, we will demolish and reconstruct, widen the Ellison Avenue Bridge, which unfortunately has been flagged by NISDOT. We've been working with the village to make sure that it maintains all levels of safety. I know the village is anxious to see this project move forward, and they've been good partners with us. And with that, we also wanted to mention that our Greenport service resumes with Memorial Day weekend, and Greenport has a wonderful tall ships program they're inviting tourists and recreational travelers out there, and we've done a package with them to ensure that customers can get there by rail. So we're very excited about the start of our summer season, Memorial Day weekend. Of course, that means the Cannonball as well, out to Montauk. And then, of course, we will have the Belmont Triple Crown race before we see you again. So we were very excited to see that we will be in full gear for Belmont service on June 9th. And that concludes our report.
Any questions for Elena? Okay, Michael.
I will be reporting on the East Side access at the CPAC, so I will refrain from making any comments this morning.
Okay. Please.
Good morning. The crime report is located on page 22. For the month of April, crimes were down 23%. We did have 7 robberies occur, 4 in the Metro North territory and 1 on the Long Island territory and 2 in Staten Island. Out of the 5, the 4 Metro North and 1 Long Island, 8 arrests have been made, clearing those 5 arrests. 5 robberies, excuse me. So any other questions?
Any questions? Thank you. Positive train control.
Okay, we're going to give you We're going to give you a brief update that Helene and I will do on where we stand on positive train control. Do we have that up and running there? Okay, next one, John. So, just the way as background is, I think many of you know, the Rail Safety Act of 2008 required railroads to put in a PTC system by December 2015. And Metro North and Long Island, since that time, have been committed to addressing the safety goals of the PTC legislation while also keeping our operation safe. We, the Metro North, Long Island, and the MTA, working with both the AAR, American Association of Railroads, and APTA, have supported legislation that provides for an extension of the 2015 implementation date. 2 things to note there is when AAR/APTA report to the FRA stated that the December deadline, the original deadline for implementation, is not achievable. As we speak right now, there are bills in the U.S. Senate and the House that are slightly different that would move the date. At the moment, it's unclear the status of that legislation. I do want to point out, we put in front of you the letters, this is fairly significant, that Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood sent to the Senate. And if you look on page, it's not numbered. It is numbered. Let's see. If you look on page number, well, it's the first page after the signature. It's like page 5. You'll see under positive train control that the Secretary is supporting 2 things I want to note. He writes a whole paragraph here. Supports the authority for the Secretary to use alternative strategies of risk reduction that provides benefits similar to PTC. And further in the bottom, where the administration is supportive of a PTC extension. Again, there are 2 different approaches right now. The Senate has proposed 3 extensions, 1 year at a time each. The Secretary is indicating that would be unnecessary. The House has supported a 5-year extension. So that's something to watch very closely, is that this is really a critical piece of this whole PTC implementation program. Finally, FRA is going to be sending a report to Congress this summer that talks about the risks to implement PTC by 2015. So, as way of background, the Metro-North and Long Island system is going to be based on Amtrak's Access system, which basically is an overlay to our automatic train control cab signal system. And we have to pause here for a minute because, again, point out that Metro-North and the Long Island, along with a few other operators in the Northeast, are the only properties who have a cab signal automatic train control system in place. That investment of billions in dollars was made here. It provides a level of safety significantly greater than what exists throughout the rest of the country on either commuter rail or on freight. So we have that system in place. What we are now doing is adopting an Amtrak system to be putting on top of that. There are a number of different revisions we have to make to the Access 2 system. They involve issues because basically a system was set up for long-distance intercity commuter rail, and we have to adapt it to the very dense operations that both Metro-North and the Long Island operate. Point out there are a number of major subsystems that have to be changed. Those are the 4 major systems, and bless you. And that we are now, both railroads together are in the process of going to get a system integrator to design and furnish the PTC system. We'll use our in-house forces to do the installation on both the right-of-way and on the rolling stock. We're aiming to award this contract by December 2012. So where we stand today, through May of this year, or through right now, we submitted in April 10, 2010 our implementation plan to the FRA. Then we did a development plan in July 2011. That was just for Long Island Railroad. We have started some early construction in October of 2011. We have advertised the RFP for the system integrator qualifications. That's the project. The contract we were aiming to award the end of the year. We have purchased some of the spectrum we need. That was finally completed after a lot of hard work by the staffs on both railroads and also with assist from the MTA. We have the spectrum we need for all of Long Island Railroad and about half of Metro-North. But as you see here, we're still missing in the northern counties. We still need that spectrum to be able to make this system functional. And we have completed the design for those various systems I noted before. That's being completed this month. So what's next is, first instance, we need to get the spectrum for the rest of the Metro-North system. That's absolutely critical. Then the system integrator. We'll be releasing the RFP, the second phase, in June. Again, to a December award. Both railroads will do a pilot program, which comes up in 2013, to basically test this system under a variety of different circumstances. And again, the critical thing is integrating all those subsystems that we listed a couple of slides ago. For Metro-North, the pilot will be on the New Haven line from Milford to New Haven, and then on the Hudson line from Tarrytown to Croton. Will be the 2 places. Helena, do you want to speak on the Long Island?
We're moving forward as well to develop a pilot and think that is, important for us in terms of testing the technology.
Right. And in both our cases, we'll be looking at interoperability issues with Amtrak. We each have that, and also New Jersey Transit is involved. And then once the pilot is done, then the FRA has to certify the pilot and the required safety plans. That's the step before you then go into a full implementation. So, saying all that, despite these efforts, which have been quite significant, there are significant risks in our ability to meet the deadline. And again, not dissimilar from what both APTA and AAR is pointing out in their studies, and we'll see what the FRA then says this summer. So the issues are that many of the PTC subsystems have not been fully developed. There are limited mass production products available. They all require approval by the FRA. Both railroads are looking for a waiver with respect to PTC compliance in non-signalized territory. There are issues regarding the reliability and maintainability of these different systems. The FTA report on the reliability of these systems and recommended best practices will not be done until next year, so that may provide some help in this area, but it's a year late. There's a real question on labor to install all this material, both on the cars and on the in the right-of-way. Long Island Railroad has very specific contract issues. Metro North, we have this similar issue. We have so many signal projects going on. We don't have the manpower to be able to implement this in this time frame. The issue of spectrum, again, it's critical, and we don't have the spectrum in the northern half of Metro North territory.
Howard, I'm just going to jump in
Sure.
because, I always advocate on the spectrum issue. The FCC is actually holding the spectrum that Metro North needs to complete its system, but they have not acted on a petition that we filed several years ago asking that they allocate it to Metro North. If they were to allocate those frequencies, we would have enough spectrum to do a spectrum management plan that covers all of Long Island Metro North and parts of New Jersey Transit. But so far, the FCC has said, no, we want you to continue to search the marketplace. We've been unable to identify a marketplace opportunity for the balance of Metro North spectrum.
Yes, thank you. And
It's always my commercial on that.
Right. And we are continuing to work on this with a lot of help, again, from David Garton at the MTA, of trying to get this issue, which seems to us rather, relatively straightforward, to be addressed. Finally, we have interoperability agreements. Metro North will need to have 11 agreements with people who go over Metro North, and Long Island Railroad will need 2. And these are also going to take time to negotiate. We also have operating risks, and the important thing here is that both of us are operating railroads, in that it's absolutely critical that whatever we put in does not have a negative impact on the operation of the service, both while we're putting it in as well as after it's fully in place. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to significantly modify the access system. In addition, there are certain characteristics of both railroads that are different than intercity rail. We have many more interlockings closer to each other. We turn trains on the main line. We operate in paired EMUs. Each one of these characteristics is different than an Amtrak locomotive pulling a series of coaches, and has with it a series of own engineering challenges. We also are concerned about the issue about reduced speed during system failure and how the braking algorithms are set up. This is how to ensure trains will stop under positive train control, and this may have an effect on capacity, which clearly we can't have, so again we have to work through those issues. In terms of the cost of it, the current estimate, and this is without a contingency for our finalized risk assessment. I think we'll be back to talk to you about that at our next update, which should be in the fall. But right now we're looking at Long Island Railroad's $340 million. Metro North is $285 million. In the state of Connecticut's an additional $125 million. So we're looking at $750 million for the two railroad systems right now. What we showed, the next slide is showing the funding that we provide in the capital program. It has already affected the deferral of state of good repair, normal replacement projects on Metro North, and Long Island Railroad's East Side Access readiness projects. And so we've already had an effect. We will complete this risk assessment. We will find out what the results are. We will then be looking to refine the budgets again. We clearly believe there are risks that the prices will go up. We've listed some of the reasons here. Again, we're looking at, if you think about it, all the railroads in the Northeast simultaneously having to do the same thing in a very small industry. So there's clearly going to be lack of competition. We've talked about the R&D nature of this project. By definition, those projects always have other issues that go with them. So that is another concern. And then the customization of the Access 2 system, the Amtrak 2 system, also has costs associated with it. So we will be back to you in the fall with with where we stand on the budget. Hopefully by then there'll be some action in the Congress that will address the deadline. We know we'll have an FRA report at that point in time, and we'll brief you at that time. And finally, I just want to point out the last page, and I believe we passed this out to everyone, is the letter that Helena and I sent to the New York Times in response to the editorial laying out the reasons why, well, safety has always been the first priority for both railroads, why we believe that an extension makes sense for both the riders and the taxpayers of the region. So, Helene, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I would just add that I think it really signifies that we've been able to make an impact on our legislators, that we are now talking about the type of extension, not whether there should be an extension. And we just need to see that nailed down legislatively. The industry knows that there has to be an extension, and really it's a question now of the type that gets implemented. We thought Ray LaHood's letter was excellent. He's saying just do the extension. You don't need to do one-year increments. That will help all of us in terms of our planning. And finally, I would say one thing Howard and I have been, very clear when we make our visits on the Hill. Early implementers who want to go forward, for example, Metrolink, that's the system that did have the accident in 2008, they should go forward. We think we will learn from their experience. And if they're ready, then let them go forward, and we'll be able to assess their progress and their use of the technology.
Okay. Any questions? Well, could we turn the lights back on?
Howard, I'm a little confused about the spectrum issue. Is there are places where there isn't, spectrum is not available, and then there are dark areas. Are those different?
Yeah, no. A dark area is referring to a part of a rail line that has no signal system.
Okay.
So that's when we use the term dark technology. Okay. The issue on spectrum is, it's been, as Helena pointed out, it's been a very difficult issue for us. We were able, after years of attempting to purchase spectrum, to buy spectrum that covers the Long Island, New York City, and I believe southern Westchester, or maybe all of Westchester. That was held by one person. We closed on that deal just in the last few weeks after 2 or 3 years, or maybe longer, of a procurement. The remainder of the spectrum is what we need, and the rest of the territory is owned by the FCC. And as Helena pointed out, we asked probably 3 years ago, I think, we asked the FCC to give us that spectrum. And the FCC has so far not given us any of that spectrum. We have been in constant dialogue with them. We are continuing that effort. We've refined what we asked for, so it's absolutely what we need. But we cannot proceed with PTC in the Metro-North territory without having the spectrum.
Is New Jersey Transit in the same position as you, lacking the spectrum?
I'm not sure. Seth, can you answer that?
They've not fully acquired the spectrum that they need, and some of the spectrum that we recently acquired, if after our analysis of our needs, there is some surplus, we obviously will discuss making it available for them. But I believe they have separate resources.
Jim.
Thanks for a full and I think important report. The concern that I have, and I'll phrase this both as a concern and a question, is for state of good repair. There's only so much money around to do work, and one of the real drivers in the capital program, at least as far as Metro-North is concerned, has always been to get state of good repair where you need it and to keep it there. And it's key to the operation and the health of this railroad going forward. And I think that at least we need to have some quantification of what PTC is doing to our goals with regard to state of good repair, number one, and number two, to find out whether, or to have you tell us whether extensions will have a positive impact on that.
Okay, Jim, so in general, I talked about the types of projects that we have had to defer when we put together a capital program to fund this. We have talked about bridges that we are not doing. We've talked about substations we're not doing, particularly in the Upper Harlem line is a place where that line has never been built with adequate number of substations, and it limits how many trains we can run. We actually can only run 8-car trains up there because there's not enough power. So we've had to defer those projects, older substations. We've gone through that listing of what had to be deferred to pay for this. Clearly, if it's over time, there are a number of impacts. One is the financial impact is not as great because it's spread over a longer period of time. Secondly, and probably as importantly, is that the probability you will do it at the most effective or efficient price is much greater if we have enough time to develop what's really a completely new technology. And so the total cost will be less, which means that the impacts on the rest of the work that we need to do would be less as well. But that's the type of thing. Helena, you may want to...
Well, and I would add that, we face the same issue with line structures, bridges. What we end up doing, because of course, we're going to maintain a safe system, both Howard and I end up putting extra resources into the annual maintenance program. So you increase inspections, increase maintenance to ensure that the asset can remain in service longer, because the money that we would have spent on those structures is now going for positive train control. But to Howard's point, one of the reasons why we have been just such strong advocates for an extension is we want this investment to be the absolute best for our systems. That means that the technology has to really be tested. It has to be proven technology before you spend, $750 million on new technology. Now, for Long Island Railroad, I'm just going to mention the dark territory issue. We do have substantially more unsignalized territory than Metro North. And we are going to put signalization in, track circuits in, because, of course, PTC, as we keep saying, is an overlay system. So you have to have a signal system on which to overlay PTC. So we will be making investments on Spionk to Montauk. I will note that will have, benefits for our riders, separate and apart from PTC. We will be able to increase train capacity on that line. Also, Ronkonkoma, the first segment of Ronkonkoma to Yaphank, because we have a lot of freight exchange issues there. And then the next segment later would be Yaphank to Riverhead. We would still have dark territory in a couple of sections, and we show that on a map that we've distributed before. So we are upgrading, to a signal system that will allow PTC overlay. And I think that's a very good investment for us. Ira, anything else?
Yeah. I just on what will remain outside of PTC. It's just from what is it? Riverhead to Greenport.
Yes, Riverhead to Greenport.
That's our application.
Yes.
It hasn't been approved.
It has not been approved.
Right, but we expect it.
But we're not concerned about Riverhead to Greenport because there is no freight that goes east of Riverhead. Mm-hmm. Our concern is Ronkonkoma to Yaphank and then Yaphank to Riverhead.
Well, do we plan to put in PTC in that section?
We are going to signalize in segments because, it is quite a long distance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to do Ronkonkoma to Yaphank, put in track circuits, and then PTC overlay, leaving in the out years Yaphank to Riverhead.
What impact would that have on capacity or the potential to increase capacity?
It clearly gives us the ability to increase capacity.
But if there's no PTC, would FRA put a limit on how many trains we can run? It was not having
we are going to put PTC in from from Ronkonkoma to Yaphank. So we will not seek a waiver for that segment. We will need a waiver east of Yaphank. But
east of Yaphank.
I don't have as much freight there, so the
Right, but
waiver is...
what would that do? I mean, maybe it would have no impact on anything for the next 50 years. I'm not sure, but if we wanted to increase capacity out to Greenport at some point, could we do it, or do we have to put PTC in, which would make it so cost prohibitive we wouldn't? At some point we would want to add a train.
I want to pause for a moment. The thing that allows us to increase capacity is signalization. That's the beginning point of increasing capacity, not PTC.
No, but I'm sorry, I'm not making myself clear. But FRA at the point when PTC is implemented, and it's not, we got a waiver. So is FRA going to say, well, you can only run this number of trains in this section because you don't have PTC?
We will have signal and PTC to Yaphank. Yes, we will have some temporal restrictions where we can't run both sets of equipment from Yaphank East. But we should do this offline because it is complicated, and it's way out there.
Okay, the other part of the railroad that I have a question about is what they call the Montauk Division. There was that part in Queens that's I don't think you run any trains on it now. That goes through Glendale, Maspeth.
Yes.
I think you just use it for deadheading. You don't even run. I don't think you run trains on it anymore. But is that included in PTC?
No, and there is a strategy to ensure that we have full separation on the Lower Montauk. I don't know if you were here when we did the presentation on the Wheelspur Yard transfer of the Lower Montauk to New York and Atlantic is part of that strategy. So that will both reduce our costs and I think improve our freight operation.
So no PTC will not
no
be
PTC there.
Okay. Wait, I'm sorry, one last thing. I just wanted to note that in Ray LaHood's letter, at least the attachment, he's asking for he's asking for something we would like to have, which is actually maybe a different system from PTC. It seems to suggest that FRA should have that there should be some flexibility in looking at alternatives to PTC. Is that a likelihood now that he's asking for it?
I think he was, basically, the reference is, alternatives to access too. That accomplishes the goals of PTC. Access 2 has type approval by the FRA because it was the only existing system. But the freights are clearly coming in with something that is different. Is that the correct phrase?
The freights do have a complete different. Yes,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Okay, any other questions?
John.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. You can get back to me if you don't know. Approximately what % of the cost of implementing PTC will be covered by federal government or federal programs of some sort?
Almost none.
I was going to say, we don't have to get back
easy.
to you
We
on
got,
that.
I think, $6 million between the two railroads, and
one
that's it.
grant. It's an absolutely unfunded federal mandate, came down in 2008 with virtually no support. In fact, $6 million is no support.
I thought that was the answer, but I didn't recall hearing that.
However, I will point out
I think it's important to get that out in the record.
I always point out, and Howard's probably going to kick me, that the freights did get a $20 million grant to set up Metrocom, which will be a freight enterprise controlling spectrum at the 220 level.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Howard.
Okay.
Information items.
Information items. So let me go one at a time. Our first is our safety report. It's in the book. Just give you a couple of highlights. Last year, and I think I've said this before, last year was not a great year for safety. We had the winter, if you recall, drove all the numbers. Fourth quarter for Metro North was our best fourth quarter ever. Couple of other things. For the first time, one of the things we've done is to recognize achievement. So we introduced the President's Cup for Safety, where we award it to a different district every year. It's a little like the Stanley Cup, it moves around. So the first time ever was the North White Plains District, and it received, because it had injury reductions between 35 and 50%, depending on the specific category. Throughout this year, what we've been focusing on is continuation of our district meetings, more work on job safety briefings, make sure people know what they should be doing. We've been doing more on audits, more on safety days. So there's been a host of initiatives between our operating department and our safety department to try to improve the safety record. And so far we've done well in 2012. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions? Okay, Howard.
Next one is our RCM fleet maintenance. And so this again is our regular report going through our achievements in the mechanical department. Again, just a couple of the highlights are that, first of all, the program, we've had many benefits from the RCM program, both in performance. It underlies the fleet performance, which underlies our on-time performance. Also, it affects our consist compliance, which I think, as I report to you, is close to 100% now, something that's new on the New Haven line in the history of Metro North. So our MDBF was slightly last year beneath goal. That was really solely the first quarter on the New Haven line. If we excluded that, we would have been significantly over goal. This year, we're well over goal. It's a little under 200,000 miles. The goal is 135,000 miles. And the other thing I should have said, too, is that this program underlies also our ability to be more efficient in how we maintain the fleet. By having a better maintained fleet, we can program our maintenance workers better, we can reduce the overtime, we can plan better, we don't need as much material. So it has many, many positives associated with it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that report.
Any questions? Okay, Howard. Diversity.
Okay, the diversity report, that is the next report. And this is basically, the quarterly report. The one thing I will mention to everyone is we are looking at, within Metro North, the methodology that we use to calculate the numbers in the report. We are taking a look at that. We want to make certain, we think there's some inconsistencies to New York City Transit Long Island, and so we're looking at that right now. And by the time we do the next report, I'll be able to fill you in if we think the methodology needed any modifications or not. Other than that, I think Chuck had a question on this one.
The new hires set forth on page 79, are those numbers included in the analysis on page 77?
Yes. I'm being told from the back the answer is yes.
So that what it looks like to me is that you are making a distinct affirmative effort to try and increase the areas where there have been not as much diversity as you might like.
We're definitely doing that, Chuck. There's no question.
May I call your attention to one area, please, not for discussion now, but at some point, and that is under the Hispanic category of skilled craft. That seems to be an area where more may be achievable down the road.
Let me see. Yeah, we'll take a look. Again, we'll take a look. And also, I'll feel much more comfortable when we complete our review of the methodology, that we'll know exactly where we have to focus on.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, and then we have elevator escalator report. So now this was the report. This is the first time the two railroads have done this report. This came out of earlier requests from the board members. This report I want to highlight is, first of all, we worked very hard, the two staffs, to make sure the report is consistent between the two railroads as well as consistent with how New York City Transit does the work. And so that's what this report shows. Overall, we are pleased with our reliability. I will tell you we are working on a few, both for the elevators and escalators. There are a couple of things I will highlight to the committee. For Metro North, at the outlying stations, the critical issue is the elevators. We have a huge number of elevators, many in fairly remote locations, and we are looking at a whole host of ways we can improve upon not so much the availability, but when there are issues, how we can respond as quickly as possible. That is our concern at the outlying stations. In Grand Central, the issue is more of the escalators. That's where most of Metro North's escalators are. They're extremely heavily used, and we are looking at a significant program that involves both maintenance, capital investment, and contracting to bring those elevators up to a higher level of performance. One of the things, and think I don't see him for a minute, but Mr. Balin had asked a while ago, is when we had problems in Grand Central, would we put up signage to better tell people where you can get an elevator and escalator? We have done that. So that we have solved, but we're now looking at the more fundamental issue of how do we improve the performance of those escalators in Grand Central. And so once we have a plan put together, I will update you when we have that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chuck?
2 questions, if I may. On the percentage available, does that mean that, for example, at the first one, Ardsley on the Hudson, 99% of the time the elevators are available? Is that
Yeah,
what the 99%?
the way, Chuck, the actual way it's calculated is a snapshot at 7 a.m., what's happening at 7 a.m. So if it's available at 7 a.m., it's assumed available for the day. If it's not, it's assumed not to be. And that's how that's calculated.
Second, if I may, if you will turn to page 87, there's a downward spike in the second or third quarter on escalator availability. Is that the Grand Central Terminal number 7 that's caused that, or what?
I think I forgot the answer to that. I think the answer is yes, Chuck. We had a couple of issues in Grand Central. Bob, do you recall?
Yeah, there were a couple of issues in Grand Central. The number 7 was out for a long period of time. It did come back into service finally over the last 2 weeks and has been operating successfully. There was a question with parts, so I mean, with only 11, if you take one out, that's 9% of it right there. So.
But it went way down for 1 quarter and then went way back
Chuck,
up.
let me get back to you. I
Well,
just
that's
don't.
fine.
We
That's
knew
fine.
that, but I just can't recall what the cause was. We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Helena.
Okay, Long Island Railroad Safety Report begins on page 92. Long Island Railroad has developed a very comprehensive strategy, and we call it Think Safety, Act Safely. And again, we're trying to establish as a priority an accident-free work environment and affirm as our safety as a core value in every aspect of our operation. Similar to Metro North, we did face some challenges in the winter of 2011, which drove numbers up for both employee accidents and customer accidents. We're pleased to see the numbers coming back down for the first quarter of 2012. We're working on one initiative that was funded directly by the FRA. We were the recipient of a grant for a rail resource management initiative, and that's being developed with the consultant Texas A&M University as part of Texas Transportation Institute. And that is a pilot program to enhance safe and efficient operations through team and individual performance. So it's a whole way of establishing a team approach to safety. We already use that in part with safety briefings before every job, but Texas A&M had some additional initiatives. As to establish a baseline, we're beginning a safety climate survey that was developed by Texas A&M. Employees will complete it and then fill it out and mail it directly back to the consultant. So we will be excited to see what comes out of that to better enhance our safety program. We also work very closely with the community on our tracks program. As you know, we have a high number of grade crossings. That becomes one of our key issues to try to train young people at an early age. Always cross at a grade crossing, never cross anywhere else, and always follow the gates. So we continue to move forward on that community initiative. And during the first quarter of 2012, we have already reached 30,000 participants for an expanded outreach and focus. And if you have any questions on safety, I'd be happy to answer those.
Chuck?
Page 102. There seems to be a spike by way of increase in the lost time and restricted duty injury case rate. Is there any commonality with respect to the kinds of injuries that are involved?
Generally, no, we have not found that. We get a lot of slip, trips, and falls amongst our employees, a high concentration in the track department, and that leads to the lost time.
Thank you.
Ira?
Yes, the FRA, the Texas A&M effort, I think was also, well, it wasn't as well, but it was at least presented to the board at the same time there was this issue with rules violations, which was a concern, I think, a year or two ago.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if we could have an update on that. I mean, a rules violation is a safety issue, but as we know, since we do have CAFs and automatic train control, it doesn't cause a serious problem, but it's a thing we don't want to see, whether it's fatigue or something else that's driving it. It would be good to know if those incidents were reduced over the last year or two.
We will get back to you on
Okay.
those. As you do, you are correct. Your memory is correct. When we did the service reductions, actually, we had a major spike in rules violations. Part of this initiative is, of course, to always advocate for situational awareness amongst our employees. Okay, on page 110, we go to our maintenance of equipment report. Just as I go to maintenance of equipment, I want to point out that they have done an outstanding job in getting the safety message across to the workforce. We had 74 days without an accident from January 26th to April 9th, working 837,380 hours that were accident-free. So we were very proud of the achievements in maintenance of equipment. Similar to Metro North's report on maintenance of equipment, we remain very focused on a reliability-centered maintenance program. We believe that the RCM schedule is particularly valuable because we have so many M7 cars in our fleet, 837. That allows us to really get a better handle on life cycle costs and intervals for replacement. And you can see some of the benefits, of course, in the OTP. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. Okay, I'm going to keep moving just so that we save time. We have our diversity and EEO report as well that's included in the book. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Questions? Okay.
And on page 134, our first quarterly escalator and elevator report. As you know, this has been an area of considerable focus at the Long Island Railroad. We have taken a number of steps to enhance the way in which we are maintaining elevators and escalators. I want to point out on page 140, you can see that we really did revise our capital program review of these assets. And we are now scheduled to replace 12 of our older pieces of equipment, 6 as part of standalone projects and 6 as part of platform renovations and refurbishment. Our goal, of course, is to ensure the highest level of safety. While we go through this escalator replacement program, we will continue to make efforts to add safety sensors to the existing older equipment. But one of the reasons why we just had to move to a full replacement strategy was it has become clear that it is enormously difficult to get these parts. Many of them have to be redesigned, re-engineered, reverse engineered, and fabricated because the manufacturer of the equipment is out of business and there are no replacement parts available. And that is clearly impacting on our escalator availability, and you can see that in some of the numbers. We have moved the unit from our facilities group to a new standalone unit under stations, and they will have a dedicated workforce that will better track the repairs and the notification process. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Okay, I'm going to move now to page 141, which is a memo on branch line OTP goals. As a committee, you asked the Long Island Railroad to review the opportunity to establish branch line OTP goals. We've actually spent a couple of months looking at that, analyzing data, and have concluded that that would not be beneficial to the overall performance of our system, and we want to stay with our overall goal of a system-wide OTP. As you can see from the analysis, particularly on page 142, we have 3 key pinch points in our operation. The Amtrak area, which is Penn and F interlocking, Herald to Jamaica is the second pinch point, and then Queens to Hicksville is the third. 65% of this of our service runs on these 3 territories, and because it's all shared territory, we think it is beneficial to ensure that we make decisions for overall system performance, not decisions that might benefit a goal set for one particular branch. I do highlight Port Jefferson, which has to travel through all 3 pinch points, which of course then has the lowest OTP, and of course it has the fewest number of trains, so mathematically you're going to see that any train delay or cancellation has a greater impact. I would note that, you can see the OTP for the Atlantic branch on page 142, table 2, is over 96%. And that is because they don't come out of Penn. They come out of, in the PM, they come out of the Atlantic terminal, and they're not subject to all of the delays that go with departing Penn, boarding issues, platform issues, tunnel issues, and then Herald. They arrive at Jamaica for a connection for the trains coming out of Penn. This, of course, is our goal with East Side Access. We look forward to the day when we can really have throughput service from 2 Manhattan terminals, lessening the burden on Penn and giving customers more throughput at Jamaica. So we have concluded that we should remain with a system-wide OTP goal, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Jack?
I'm troubled by the last sentence of your conclusion on page 143. Decision-making must work toward optimizing system-wide performance and not result in actions that benefit specific branch OTP goals. Why are they inconsistent?
We work hard at training our personnel in the Movement Bureau, especially in distress situations, to take a number of factors into account. One is the number of customers jamming Penn, what we have to do to clear those customers out, where we can do cancel combos, which of course is the Babylon branch because we have the most dense service on that branch. We also try to bear in mind customers that haven't had a train for a particular interval because they have less frequent service. All of these things have to be balanced. The one factor we don't want our Movement Bureau personnel to throw into the mix when they're in distressed train situations is, oh, I've got to protect the Port Jefferson OTP because we have a different standard for Port Jefferson and a higher goal. We want to maximize performance across the system, benefiting the most customers, but of course we take into account those customers that have less frequent service. But, Penn is an enormous challenge in a distressed situation, and you really have to move the big 4 as quickly as you can to clear out Penn. Ira.
Yeah. I was kind of disturbed by the last sentence. A little bit
It's the heart of the issue.
Yeah, it is the heart of the issue, and it's whether goal setting would influence. I guess it would influence the personnel, and I agree with you for the reverse. In other words, would someone say, well, since Port Jefferson has a lower on-time performance goal, because we do have goals for each branch. It's in the board book. We don't just have an overall goal. Correct? I mean, we do try to achieve a goal for each branch of 95.1%.
We have a system-wide goal.
But
Right.
But how about the goal for each branch? We don't?
No, that's been the question that you asked us to look at.
Well, Okay, do we?
One, it's a,
because
each branch has the same goal,
right,
which leads to a
right.
system-wide goal of 95.1.
Right, but we do try, but we are trying to achieve a 95.1% overall on-time performance for each branch. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because that didn't seem to come through, and that's what I see
Oh,
here.
well,
And the question was, should we have a lower goal for certain branches, such as Port Jefferson, because we
Right.
can't attain the 95.1%? And if we believe that staff at the railroad would say, well, I don't have to do as well in Port Jefferson, therefore I can sacrifice the Port Jeff trains, I agree with you. We don't want that. So this is fine, except that setting goals that we can't, I still have, problems with setting goals that we can't achieve. It's because over time we haven't on some of these branches. I mean, I noted that at the beginning of the meeting you noted those actions on the main line in Hicksville that supposedly will help this in the future. And in light of that, I support this effort, and I look forward to seeing every branch being at or above 95.1% in the coming years. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Any other questions? Okay, Helena Monahan?
Okay, we're up to my action item, yes. On page 145, we are asking for board authorization for both our MTA Real Estate and Long Island Railroad to enter into 3 agreements necessary to effectuate the first phase of the Moynihan Development Project. And those actions are an amendment to an existing easement between the Urban Development Corporation, doing business as ESDC, and the Long Island Railroad with respect to the West End Concourse, a memorandum of understanding between Long Island Railroad and Amtrak that confirms the parties' intent to amend the existing Penn Station lease agreement, and then the actual amendment to the lease when we get there. So it's 3 actions. Again, let me just for a moment describe, what will be achieved in this Moynihan project as it's really a sub-project of Phase 1, the West End Concourse, which, as many of you probably know, if you've been at Penn and if you've used it, it is a concourse that currently just serves Long Island Railroad used tracks. It's like 13 through 19, and it is a corridor actually under 8th Avenue. And it has street access. You can go right, to the concourse level to a staircase upstairs on 8th Avenue. So this project will both widen the existing concourse, add elevators and escalators, and it will lengthen it to cover tracks down to track number 5 through 12. And that will permit greater customer flow out of Penn. Clearly, NJT customers will utilize it. And it will have an additional escalator at that end, the lower end now, up to the street level. So it is beneficial for Long Island Railroad from a customer flow perspective. However, we were very careful in our negotiation to maintain our current costs as that is built out. So we had a long negotiation with Amtrak over how we were covering those costs, and that is actually going to be reflected in the amendment to the lease. So with that, we ask for your approval.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're
Okay,
into procurement.
so
Howard.
Metro North procurements. So we have 11 procurements this month, totaling a little under $26 million. We have 5 non-competitive procurements, and then we have 5 competitive and 1 ratification. The 5 non-competitive are a 2-year agreement. Do you need to do a motion first, or do you want me to explain? Okay. Go through it first? Okay. So we have a 2-year agreement with Wesco for friction brakes used on the M2 for 6 cars. These cars are going to be retired. And as we note in here, we're purchasing less than we would have been because of how we're managing this process. Wesco is the OEM on this project. Then we have a 3-year purchase agreement with Transtech for the pantographs on the M246 cars, also for the M8 cars. They are again the OEM on this, and they're unique cars. As we all know, New Haven cars are unique in the world. So they are Transtech is the OEM for these power collection parts. Then there are 2 items for the NYSED contract for approval. One is for Metro North janitorial services. That one is for $1.2 million at a variety of different facilities. The second is additional funding to the all-agency temporary personnel contract, which has been awarded to NYSED. We are managing that on behalf of all the agencies, and that's for an additional $9.9 million for funding. Most of that is for transit and for the BSC for additional services. And finally, there's a 2-year contract with Axion for the repair and replacement of radio and public address systems on the M7 cars, and they are the OEM for that equipment as well. So those are the non-procurements.
I have a question, Howard. The temporary personnel service.
The temporary personnel services,
Right,
$9,950,000. The existing one is $16,800,000.
right,
This is like more than half of that.
right.
Is this something that just popped up, or was it a growing thing?
There was again, the majority, and I'm going to ask if Anthony can fill in here, there were certain needs that have developed over the last few years, both the transit and the BSC, and that's what is driving this number. For the 2 railroads, the amount added is actually small. Can you explain, Anthony, both the BSC and the transit, what's happened?
Carl, between the transit and BSC, the additional funding was almost the whole bit. Metro North and Long Island, $450,000, but transit and BSC was $9.5. The specific reason, and I've asked if you want further clarification, what I find from BSC is it had to do with the rollout, the PeopleSoft rollout. Also in the specific areas of accounts payable, the HR rollout, benefits, and the pension payroll services for BSC. On the transit side, it was to backfill some vacant positions in various areas, paratransit, human resources impact, and corporate communications that had to do with processing MetroCard claims. And in addition to customer complaints and the processing mail, it's obviously administrative area for reduced fare MetroCards. So it's a conglomeration of various tasks that were performed at both BSC and transit.
Did a lot of this have to do with people that had been laid off, or through attrition or something, or?
I would assume, and I can't speak again for the transit.
Carl, if you want, I'm not exactly sure. We can find out from both the BSC directly and transit.
Okay,
a more detailed
jumped out at me
explanation.
like
I'm sorry?
I said, that's okay, I can wait, but
Okay.
it just jumped out at me as a big increase.
Understood.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding okay, need a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Okay, then we have 5 competitive procurements. The first one is a 3-year on-call contract to AECOM for ADA consulting services. This was they're selected through an RFP process. Then we have 3 competitively solicited service contracts with Metro North on behalf of Long Island Railroad and Sertoa. Metro North was the procurement agent. This is for weed and brush spraying and vegetation removal on all 3 railroads. It's 3 separate contracts because there are different functions being done at each of the railroads. And this is an award to D'Angelo Brothers and Asplund for these services, and also United Right of Way. Each one slightly different depending on who is the selected vendor for that piece of work on that particular railroad. And finally, the last one is was a modification to Veritas, Bureau Veritas North America. They provide inspection services for wheel and axles for our rolling stock. The contract is actually a Long Island contract on behalf of us. It's been extended 6 months. We're adding the funding to go through December 2012 in this contract.
Any questions? I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
And finally, we had one ratification. This is for a personal services contract with Mercer to conduct an expedited assessment of our Metro-North Employee Relations and Diversity Department. The goal here is to look at best practices from an organizational and functional standpoint and then report back to me so that we can address this issue.
Move second.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Michael?
I have one ratification.
Capital Construction this month has 3 procurement items for approval, all of which are competitive and total just over $23 million. The items begin on page 164. The first item is for a modification to the Eastside Access General Engineering contract for the revised design of the 48th Street entrance and an increase in funding for construction phase services. Items 2 and 3 are modifications to the Queens Board tunnel contract for installation of additional 47 secant piles and for increasing the hours of the tunnel boring machine pressurized intervention crew. The secant pile work is a scope and budget transfer from future contract CH 057.
Okay, any questions? Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Elena?
Long Island Railroad has no non-competitive procurements, and we have no competitive procurements, but we do have one ratification. We ask for ratification of an emergency one-year public works contract in the amount not to exceed $1.5 million to Nuvo Elevator Industries for full-time maintenance, repair, on-call emergency and safety upgrade services for Long Island Railroad's 19 escalators in Nassau and Suffolk County. This actually was a competitive solicitation. We had 5 firms that were sent the scope of work for consideration. 3 of the firms had current contracts off the New York State Office of General Services list, and 2 were contracts that New York City Transit has. Only 2 responded, Nuvo and Schindler. And we were able to select Nuvo based on price and negotiation, and we request ratification approval.
Any questions? Need a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Good.
Well, I think we've moved pretty well.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Good.
Move to adjourn?
Move second?
Second.
All in favor? Carried.